بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, welcome and thank you all for joining us today at this very blessed event hosted by the Bukhari Community Center and Masjid. قبل كل شيء, before we begin, we want to start with the recitation of some verses from the Holy Quran. And to begin, I'd like to invite Sheikh Ziyad to come forward and recite some verses from the Quran. فليتفضل مشكورا ومأجورا شيخ زياد.
وقال الشيطان لما قضي الأمر إن الله وعدكم وعد الحق ووعدتكم فأخلفتكم وما كان لي عليكم من سلطان إلا أن دعوتكم فاستجبتم لي فلا تلوموني ولوموا أنفسكم ما أنا بمصرخكم وما أنتم بمصرخي إني كفرت بما أشركتمون من قبل إن الظالمين لهم عذاب أليم وأدخل الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها بإذن ربهم تحيتهم فيها سلام ألم تر كيف ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء تؤتي أكلها كل حين بإذن ربها ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس لعلهم يتذكرون ومثل كلمة خبيثة كشجرة خبيثة اجتثت من فوق الأرض ما لها من قرار يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ويضل الله الظالمين ويفعل الله ما يشاء. And Shaytan will say, after the judgment has been passed, indeed Allah has made you a true promise, and I too made you a promise, but I failed you. I did not have any authority over you. I only called you, and you responded to me. So do not blame me, blame yourselves. I cannot save you, nor can you save me. Indeed, I denounce your previous association of me with Allah. Indeed, the wrongdoers will suffer a painful punishment. And those who believe and do good will be admitted into gardens under which rivers flow, to stay there forever by the will of their Lord, where they will be greeted with salam, with peace. Do you not see how Allah compares a good word to a good tree? Its roots are firm, and its branches reach the sky. It yields its fruit in every season by the will of its Lord. This is how Allah sets forth examples for people, so perhaps they will be mindful. And the example of the evil word is like that of an evil tree, uprooted from the earth, having no stability. Allah makes the believers steadfast with the firm word in this worldly life and the hereafter, and Allah leaves the wrongdoers astray, for Allah does what He wills. Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
So the next segment marks the beginning of a very exciting and insightful series that will delve deep into the world of the unseen. So that's the theme of the program that'll take place for the next week, inshallah, till next Friday. So it's a realm often overlooked in our everyday lives, yet one that profoundly impacts our existence. We have with us today, and we're very honored to announce the presence of Sheikh Muhammad Tim Humble, which is from Newcastle, UK, graduated from the famous faculty of Hadith, Kulliyat al-Hadith, and Islamic Studies at the Islamic University of Medina in 2011. He's also experienced in the field of Ruqya, the Islamic method of healing with the Quran. So our debut lecture tonight is titled The Traps of the Shaytan in the Modern World. So without further delay, I'm honored to introduce our esteemed speaker, Sheikh Muhammad Tim Humble, for this evening, who will guide us through these essential teachings and help us uncover the traps of Shaytan in the modern world. فليتفضل مشكورا ومأجورا شيخ أيها الفاضل شيخ محمد تيم همبل.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, before I actually start the topic, I hope Sheikh Ahmed is going to let me add a little bit of a personal experience with regard to the Bukhari Center. And I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I'm allowed to just, add something there. I first came to Ottawa before the center was established. I came and I delivered a lecture. I think it was Ottawa U, right? It was Ottawa University. And we also, we went to the masjid, some of the masajid, the local masajid, amazing masajid, Allah bless them, fantastic. We delivered a few little programs here and there. And I remember at the time it was a distant dream, right? Do you remember that? It was like a distant dream. It was like, and I said, Ikhwani, we're in the university delivering this lecture. Is it not, we couldn't have a masjid? They said, we can, but it's difficult. The masajid, there's a lot going on and it's not easy for them. So we did it in the university, but don't, inshallah. Say inshallah, that kind of situation, right? And subhanallah, by the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal, I don't know if it was the next time or the time after, I came back and there's a little center. And still people are asking me, why Ottawa? All the places in the world you go, why Ottawa? And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you, wallahi, I'm going to tell you the truth. Wallahi, alladhi la ilaha illahu. The reason I came is I saw the love that the brothers had for the da'wah. Me personally, I'm not a person who's bothered by crowds. I'll be really honest with you. I don't mind if there's one person. I do most of my da'wah work with nobody except the cameraman. The only person sitting in front of me is the cameraman, and he's probably on his phone at the same time I'm talking. And I'm used to that. I don't mind. So it's never been about filling a room full of people or having a room full of people. But what I really, really wanted was to see people who really wanted to take this da'wah to the next level and actually to bring this da'wah, the da'wah to the Quran and the Sunnah and what the early generations were upon, and to bring it to the people online, offline, in person. And I saw these brothers and they had it, they wanted it. It was very small, right? We had very, very few, small number of brothers used to come. We didn't have a big room like this with lots of people. We had very few people. But there was a big desire. And subhanAllah, I'm going to tell you something, so I don't take too much of your time. I'm going to tell you something that happened while I was all the way over in Alberta, in Edmonton. That some brothers, they were there, and I said to him, Akhi, he said to me, I just came back from traveling myself. I said, where did you go? He said, I went to Ottawa. I said, okay, what did you do there? He said, I went because of the knowledge that's there. And that shocked me because I never heard that before. I heard people going to Toronto. That was famous, and everyone went to Toronto, right? Like, I never heard of people saying, I want to come to Ottawa because there's ilm there. There's people who want to teach the sunnah, and there's ilm, and there's mashayikh, and there's a masjid, and there's people who are trying to learn the deen, and it's a great environment. And I was really amazed. I was really happy, wallahi, and that's the grace of Allah. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. It's the grace of Allah that we've gone from a university campus room with a few people to filling out a conference center. And honestly, as much as I love the conference center, may Allah bless the brother who facilitated us for us and all the volunteers, I would love it if it was in a big masjid. That was the Bukhari Center Masjid. That would just be so amazing, wallahi. And inshaAllah ta'ala, we're going to keep coming bi'idhnillahi al-aziz. And inshallah, better than us will come as well. So bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, I just wanted to share that with you, that you know where I'm coming from. That I still see that same desire, that same drive. Online is amazing, and it's known, Bukhari TV and everything, that's all over the world. Like, everybody knows about it. And alhamdulillah, now to see the center, the physical center, because at the end of the day, when a speaker comes to deliver a lecture, or you watch something online, these days the attention span of people is 30 seconds. It doesn't change a community. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to be really honest with you. It helps, don't get me wrong, it's rewarded bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, but it doesn't change a people. What changes a people are the bricks and mortar, the masjid that is physically there, the day in, day out. I'm an imam of a masjid sometimes, and I part-time volunteer imam. And I tell the people, you think I have a room like this? People say, what, looking at me, saying to me, Muhammad Tim, give us a lecture. The brother's there, like, Muhammad Tim, is something wrong with the door outside. Akhi, can you fix the toilet? Because something is, that's not, there's something you got wrong. Akhi, what's wrong with the heating? This is the day-to-day grind of the imam. Akhi, my son just got kicked out of school. Someone comes to you and says, oh, wallahi, my social services are coming, they're going to take my kids from me, and what you're going to do about it? What support you're going to give me? That's a day-to-day grind that imam has. The day-to-day job of every single day working with those people. And the guest speaker comes and, inshallah, the job is to lift people a little bit, motivate people a little bit, and bismillah. But wallahi, it's a totally different thing. To be there day in, day out for your community, that is a different thing completely. And it's totally worth the effort. For just a few words, from me to encourage you guys. And at the same time, I'll also say something, and then I'll start the lecture, inshallah. A lot of times when we come to raise funds for a project, people say, but you're just going to go to the Middle East, right? And go to the Kharij, and these guys just going to pull out the millions, yeah? He's going to write you a check, and he's going to say, just you fill in how many zeros you want. Like, in the reality is that projects don't start like that. I live in the Middle East. I've sat in these donor meetings day in, I've done it day after day. And they will always say to you, what do you have now? What are your community doing for you? What are the people locally, what are they trying to build? Then I'll come on top and we give you something. Like, if you come to them and say, I don't have anything in my communities, all, everyone's kind of a little bit reluctant, he's going to say, well, why should I get involved? And that's the reality. And also, funny, from the Middle East is slow. It's a multi-year, 5 to 10 year project. If you start today, 5 to 10 years, you might get something. I just encourage the brothers and sisters, just to think about that. And inshallah, we're going to, leave that topic and start the topic of the lecture, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. We begin with the praise of Allah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to exalt and mention and grant peace to our Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and to his family and his companions. Around about 11 years ago, I delivered a lecture entitled Traps of the Shaytan. I don't know if you knew about that when you set this topic up, but 11 years ago or more, it was one of those times when I was going around the UK delivering lectures, when I just graduated from the Islamic University of Medina, and I was going from masjid to masjid, and I was delivering lectures, and I delivered a lecture. And I watched that lecture today. Today I watched my lecture to see what I said and see, make sure I got the points and everything. But I feel like it's time to revisit that topic. وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Remind people, because reminders benefit the believers. And I think it's time to remind ourselves, and I think it's time to go in more detail, and it's time to bring more evidence, and it's time to look at this in the best way we can in the time that we have. Now, I might take some breaks in the lecture. I'm going to see how it goes. If it gets a little long for us, we might take a little break and then come back and do a little more, inshallah ta'ala. But I want to start with a question, which I'm going to try to answer for you. Who is the Shaytan? The word Shaytan is a word that is used for al-aati al-mutamarrid min kulli shay'. The arrogant, tyrannical, stubborn of everything, anything which is arrogant, anything which is a tyrant, anything which is stubborn in doing evil is called Shaytan. And that's why this word can be used for human beings just like it can be used for the jinn, even though when we usually use it, we most commonly think of the jinn. Allah Azza wa Jal said in Surah Al-An'am, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ يُوحِي بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوهُ فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. Like this we made for every prophet enemies. Shayateen, from the men and the jinn, inspiring each other. Yuhi ba'duhum, inspiring each other. Ila ba'din, zukhruf al-qawli, adorned, decorated speech. And they know how to speak, how to adorn their speech, how to make it seem like it's beautiful. That's why, as an example, when you hear Shayateen al-Ins talk about freedom, and it's not freedom, it's slavery. It's slavery to themselves and slavery to their desires. هَرَبُوا مِنَ الرِّقِّ الَّذِي خُلِقُوا لَهُ فَبُلُوا بِرِقِّ النَّفْسِ وَالشَّيْطَانِ. They ran away from the slavery they were created from, or created for, and they became slaves to themselves and slaves to the shaitan. Then these shayateen, min shayateen al-ins, they dress it up and they talk about freedom. And it seems like the most beautiful thing, such that even some of the Muslims say, I want a piece of this freedom. زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا. It's decorated, it's adorned, it sounds good, but in the end it is غُرُورًا. It's a lie, it's a deception. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوهُ. If your Lord had willed, they would never have done it. Don't think that your Lord is being defeated here. Don't think that your Lord is not able to stop them from doing it. Rather, Allah Azza wa Jal has a wisdom and a reason for why these shayateen do what they do. فَذَرْهُمْ, leave them alone. وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ, and the lies they invent. To support this, and in support of this, there is a narration. The narration came with numerous weak chains, but when you put them together, you feel like the hadith, perhaps it reaches the level of Hasan لغيره. And it's the hadith of Abi Dharr radiyallahu anhu. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, هل تعوذت بالله من شياطين الجن والإنس? Have you sought Allah's refuge from shaitan of the jinn and the men? قال فقلت يا رسول الله وهل للإنس من شياطين? He said, O Messenger of Allah, are there really shaitan? Is there really a shaitan among the people, among human beings? قال نعم هم شر من شياطين الجن. Yes, they are worse than the shayateen of the jinn. Al-Qurtubi rahimahullah ta'ala brings in his tafsir from Malik ibn Dinar that he said, إن شيطان الإنس أشد علي من شيطان الجن. The shaitan of the men are worse for me than the shaitan of the jinn. It's harder for me than the shaitan of the jinn. وذلك أني إذا تعوذت بالله ذهب عني شيطان الجن وشيطان الإنس يجيئني فيجرني إلى المعاصي عيانا. He said, as for the shaitan of the jinn, when I say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, the shaitan of the jinn go away. But the shaitan of the ins, he doesn't go away, he stays there. And he tries to bring me to the sin in front of my eyes, openly. Right in front of me, he's telling me to sin. Iblis, Al-La'in, Al-Rajim, the cursed one, the one that is being cast out from Allah's mercy, was given the blessings of Allah. But pride and arrogance caused him to reject and be stubborn and refuse the command of Allah. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. When we said to the angels, bow to Adam, and they bowed, except Iblis. Iblis was not an angel. This is istithna'un munqati'. There's no connection. Illa Iblis. Aba, he refused. Wastakbara, and he was arrogant. Wa kana min al-kafirin, and he was a disbeliever. And he said, قال أرأيتك هذا الذي كرمت علي لئن أخرتني إلى يوم القيامة لأحتنكن ذريته إلا قليلا. He said, have you seen this man that you have honored over me? As though he's saying to Allah, how dare you have honored Adam over me? If you allow me to live until Yawm al-Qiyamah, I'm going to take hold of all of his children except a few. So this shaitan is an enemy. إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًّا إِنَّمَا يَدْعُو حِزْبَهُ لِيَكُونُوا مِنْ أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. Shaitan is an enemy to you, so take him as your enemy. Don't take him as a friend. Take him as an enemy. He only calls his people to be from the people of the burning fire. And this shaitan, he has a name, a laqab, a name that he's known by. And this name is Al-Gharur. Al-Gharur. And Al-Gharur is the one who deceives you, the chief deceiver. That's his nickname that he's known by, the chief deceiver. And this is the first thing I really want you to focus upon in the traps of the Shaytan, is that Shaytan is going to try to deceive you. He's going to try to present something to you that is not the reality that you think it is. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ إِنَّ وَعْدَ اللَّهِ حَقٌّ. O mankind, indeed the promise of Allah is true. فَلَا تَغُرَّنَّكُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَلَا يَغُرَّنَّكُمْ بِاللَّهِ الْغَرُورِ. O mankind, indeed the promise of Allah is true. So don't let yourself be deceived by the life of this world, and don't let yourself be deceived by the great deceiver. The biggest liar. صَدَقَكَ وَهُوَ كَذُوب. The Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Hurraira, radiyallahu anh, he told you the truth, but he's a big liar. That's the Shaytan. So I want to start by talking about the promises that the Shaytan made. What are these promises which were made by the Shaytan when he set out what he's planning to do and what his plot is? Because he is al-gharur, the big liar, the big deceiver. What are his promises? قال أنظرني إلى يوم يبعثون قال إنك من المنظرين قال فبما أغويتني لأقعدن لهم صراطك المستقيم ثم لآتينهم من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم وعن أيمانهم وعن شمائلهم ولا تجد أكثرهم شاكرين. He said, my Lord, let me have respite until the day when you resurrect the people. Allah said, for a wisdom that is with Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can be from those people who have been given respite. There's a latifa in this, a small benefit. If Allah answered the dua of Iblis, you should never, ever, ever think that Allah will not answer your dua. Taban, Allah didn't answer the dua of Iblis as an honor for him. Allah answered it as a disgrace for him, but there's a wisdom in it. And Allah answered. He said, my Lord. He doesn't have the ability to say, I'm going to live until Yawm al-Qiyamah. He says, Allah, please let me live until the day they resurrect. You resurrect the people. The day the people are resurrected. Allah said, you'll be from those people who are given a time. قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي. O Allah, as you sent me astray, I'm certainly going to sit on your straight path. Not walk on the straight path. Not take the straight path. Because the straight path is وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. Obeying Allah and the Messenger puts you among the prophets, those who are the most truthful in faith, the martyrs and the righteous. Shaytan is not there. But Shaytan is waiting, sitting, waiting for you on that straight path. Then I will come to them from in front of them, and from behind them, and from their right and their left, and you will not find most of them to be grateful. This is the first promise the Shaytan makes. I'm waiting for you on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. And that's why people say, why is it when people do haram and everything, the Shaytan doesn't bother with them? Shaytan's not waiting for them on their path where they've gone astray. Shaytan is waiting for the believers on Allah's straight path. As for the people who've gone away, Shaytan just wants to keep them there, that's all. But Shaytan is waiting on Allah's straight path. And he's going to come at you from every single angle. He's not going to leave an opportunity that he can get you with, except that he's going to attack you from all of those angles. And he says to Allah, and Allah confirms the truth of it, most people will not be grateful. Most of the people are not going to be grateful. And the Shaytan said in what Allah tells us in Surah An-Nisa, وَلَأُضِلَّنَّهُمْ وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُبَتِّكُنَّ آذَانَ الْأَنْعَامِ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذِ الشَّيْطَانَ وَلِيًّا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ خَسِرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا. He says, I am certainly going to misguide them. So that's his first aim. He wants to misguide you. وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ, I am going to give them false hopes. Al-amani. And someone might ask, what's the difference between ulul himma, high aspirations, and al-amani, false hopes? Or a tamanni. The difference is when you have high aspirations, you're working towards them. And you've got a big dream, and you're working towards it. Like we talked about the dream of having a masjid. It's a big dream. It's a little far away. We got some ground to cover, but we're working towards it. $1, $10, $50, $100, bit by bit, we're working towards it. We got a big dream and we're working for it. But the Shaytan doesn't do that. The Shaytan gives you a dream that you are not working for. You're sitting down and saying, you know, when I'm older, I'm going to make tawbah. Or Shaytan says to you, Allah is generous. Is Allah not generous? Of course. اقرأ وربك الأكرم. Your Lord is the most generous. But Shaytan doesn't tell you it from the point of view of what? Of appreciating Allah's generosity and His blessings. Shaytan tells you, don't worry about the sin you do. You're already forgiven. It's okay. Just do it. You're going to be forgiven. Allah's Kareem, Allah will forgive you. Don't worry about it. Just do it. So he gives you this false hope that makes you stop working. Doesn't make you want to work like ulu al-himma. It makes you actually stop working. You're like, I'm just going to never mind, you know. And from this is when Shaytan says to you, Iman is in my heart. Don't judge me. The qawl of the murji'ah. The people who play with their religion and the religion means nothing to them. They do all kinds of haram and then they say, Iman is in my heart. False hopes. False ideas, something that isn't true. Sahih, Iman is in your heart, and Iman is on your tongue, and Iman is on your limbs. But when Shaytan whispers that to you, what does he mean? He means don't worry about the sins you do, they don't matter. They don't take a person out of Islam, they don't make someone do evil, they don't make you a cause for Allah's anger, they don't cause the punishment of the grave. No, just leave all that, don't worry. You're doing just fine. He gives you false hopes. وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ, and I will command them, and they will cut the ears of the cattle. And I will command them, and they will change the creation of Allah. And this is particularly relevant in the modern world today. And I'm going to try and say this without getting into trouble, which is going to be difficult. But you all know the movement that exists today for people to change the creation that Allah created them upon. Allah Azza wa Jal, fundamental scientific facts. Allah Azza wa Jal created you in a certain way, and the shaitan tells you to be something other than what Allah created you. Why? Because the shaitan wants to change something greater than that. Don't think shaitan doesn't. The shaitan's this issue of all these changes that people are making in this modern kind of movements to change the creation of Allah. Don't think that that's the goal of the shaitan. Shaitan doesn't have small goals, he has big goals. Shaitan wants you to change something bigger. He wants you to change the fitrah of Tawheed. He wants you to change the fitrah of Tawheed. To change the worship of Allah alone to worship something else. So how does he do this? One of the ways he does it is by making you displeased with how Allah created you. And once you leave the fitrah of how Allah created you, if you want to call it gender orientation, all this other stuff, all those letters of the alphabet. I'm trying. And you change what Allah Azza wa Jal created you upon, what else will you change after that? Allah is my witness. How many of those people stay upon Tawheed? Even though that sin doesn't take you out of Islam, right? If you believe it to be haram, it doesn't take you out of Islam. But how many of those people stay upon Tawheed? Wallahi, I cannot think of any that stay upon it. Because once you left the creation that Allah created you upon, the shaitan will say to you, now leave the greatest thing that Allah created you upon. And it's not male and female, and it's not all the other things. The greatest thing that Allah created you upon, مَا مِن مَوْلُودٍ إِلَّا يُولَدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. There is no child except he's born naturally wanting to worship one God and one God alone. And once you start to change the creation of Allah, you will change the fitrah of Allah, which is at Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. And whoever takes the shaitan as a wali, as a protector, as an associate, instead of Allah, فَقَدْ خَسِرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا. That person has lost. We heard the recitation and we'll repeat the ayah in Surah Ibrahim. وقال الشيطان لما قضي الأمر إن الله وعدكم وعد الحق ووعدتكم فأخلفتكم وما كان لي عليكم من سلطان إلا أن دعوتكم فاستجبتم لي فلا تلوموني ولوموا أنفسكم. The shaitan will say when everything is done, Allah promised you a promise, and Allah's promise was true. And I promised you a promise, and I broke my promise to you. Because that is the nature of the shaitan. And that's what we can see today. Even when we talk about the fitrah, the issues of the fitrah, when the people leave that, are they happy? La wallahi, the shaitan leaves them and then they become miserable. Because the shaitan doesn't keep his promises. He tells you, just do this and you'll be happy. Just do this and you'll be happy. Just do this and you'll be happy, but you'll never ever be happy because he breaks his promise. وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ. I promised you and I broke my promise. And I never had any authority over you. And I want you to understand the traps of the shaitan, my brothers and sisters. Never does the shaitan have sultan over a believer. He doesn't drag you and put you in the fire with his hands. Shaitan doesn't. He doesn't take you and drag you and put you in the hellfire with his hands. What he does is إِلَّا أَن دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. Except that I call you, I invite you, and you answer me. Shaitan says, come to the hellfire over here, it's nice and warm. And you go. He doesn't pick you and put you in there. You are the one who puts yourself in it. You're the one who steps into it. He tells you, oh, you should check this place out. It's so good. And he whispers and he lies and he deceives you and he tells you things that don't worry, you'll make tawbah and everything will be fine and it's not that important anyway and it's not that big of a deal. And he tells you until you yourself answer his call. And so he says, فَلَا تَلُومُونِي, don't blame me. وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, but blame yourselves. And that's true. Shaytan calls you to what your nafs craves. And this is really important. We're going to speak about this extensively in our talk, inshaAllah ta'ala. The shaitan calls you to what your nafs already craves. And all of us, our nufus, our souls, crave something different. So some of us are attracted by some things. Others among us are attracted by other things. Some of us, for example, could be tempted by a certain sin. Other people, that same sin will not tempt you. It doesn't tempt you at all. And Shaytan doesn't know your heart like Allah knows your heart. Allah is the one who knows everything that you conceal. Shaitan doesn't know everything. But Allah has given the shaitan the ability to know enough about you to know what you like and what works for you and what will bring you. And shaitan magnifies it and makes it look amazing and tells you there's no way you can be patient. Even if you know it's wrong, you can't possibly be patient. And he calls you with a personalized invitation that is made just for you. And if you answer him, then it's only yourself that you have to blame. And later on in this talk, inshallah, we're going to talk about some of the ways we can train ourselves by Allah's permission to resist that invitation. But I want to tell you something, my brothers and sisters, because I think I might have made you a little bit miserable with this talk about all the things the shaitan's going to do and how he's going to attack you from every angle. I want to give you the glad tidings that the plot of the shaitan is weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ كَيْدَ الشَّيْطَانِ كَانَ ضَعِيفًا. The plot of the shaitan is constantly weak. Kana here gives the meaning of always and forever. It's not strong sometimes and weak at others. Kana da'ifa. It's weak all the time, constantly weak. And that's because of two things. Number one, the plot of the shaitan, it doesn't have any power to it. Remember, إِلَّا أَن دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. I don't have power over you, I invite you. So when his plot is just waswasa, the Prophet ﷺ said, Alhamdulillah, الَّذِي رَدَّ كَيْدَ الشَّيْطَانِ إِلَى الْوَسْوَسَةِ. Alhamdulillah, the one who made the plot of the shaitan nothing but waswasa. SubhanAllah, could you imagine if the shaitan could actually snatch you and put you in the fire? And you were walking around the street scared that the shaitan's going to come out and just drag you into the hellfire. He doesn't have that. Kana da'if, and all he has is just a tongue, that's it. It's like an enemy who came to fight you, but he's not allowed to hit you. He doesn't have any weapons. All he can do is just talk. He's good at talking, but that's all he can do. He can't hit you, he can't attack you, he can't stab you, can't shoot you, can't do anything. All he can do is just talk. So that's the first reason why the plot of the shaitan is kana da'ifa. The second is, and this is the greatest reason, وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. They plot, but Allah plots. And Allah is the best of those who plot. Allah protects His believing servants and turns the plot of the shaitan against him and makes the plot of the shaitan end in failure with regard to the believing servants of Allah. And for these two reasons, the plot of the shaitan is constantly weak. So now let me talk about some of the features of the plots of the shaitan in addition to what we've heard. So we've heard about changing the creation of Allah. Wallahi, what we see in the world today it's insane, it's shocking, and how people are being encouraged to change how Allah created them. But there are other things from the features of the plots of the shaitan. Allah Azza wa Jal said, الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا والله واسع عليم. Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah tells us in the Quran, Shaytan promises you poverty and he commands you to do immorality. And Allah promises you forgiveness from Him and grace. And Allah is wasi'un alim. Shaitan promises you poverty. In other words, when you go to give sadaqah, the shaitan makes you scared of the matters of this dunya. Oh, but if you give this sadaqah, you won't have enough money for yourself. Not just sadaqah. Let me talk to you about a modern trap of the shaitan that this ayah applies to. How you earn your living. How you earn your living. So the shaitan tells you, Akhi, that job, you need that job, man. If you don't take that job, you know that you're going to have to beg from the people. How is even your mom and dad going to think of you after you went and studied and then you're going to not take a job like that? It's only for a while. Inshallah, you'll get the money and you'll get a different job and then you'll make tawbah. Shaitan is trying to make you do haram by telling you that if you don't do it, something really bad is going to happen to you. You're going to be poor. People are going to say things about you. Bad things are going to happen to you. And if a person, all of us believe that all riches come from Allah, and all of us believe that barakah comes from Allah, and all of us believe that the heavens and the earth are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that if Allah wills, He can give you the wealth of the heavens and the earth, kun fayakun, be and it is. Why still are you in that haram job then? الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. Shaitan is telling you, look, you can't, you have to. Shaitan is telling you if you leave that job, you're going to have debt, you're not going to be able to pay it back. You're going to have to downgrade your house. Maybe you're going to move out of that nice house you have and you're going to have to live in a place that's not nice. You're going to be poor. Shaitan tells you if you give that sadaqah, the thing that you've been saving up for, you're not going to be able to afford it. وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. Shaitan tells you to do filthy things. The worst, most immoral kinds of sin. Now we're going to talk more about this inshallah ta'ala, but I want to ask a question kind of for us to think about. Why fahsha? Why fahsha? Shaitan wants to kindle your desire. And he wants that desire to become so great that you prefer it over the love of Allah and the dar al-akhirah until the point where you actually leave Islam because of it. And I'm going to tell you, I have, للأسف الشديد, it's painful to say, dealt with many Muslims who left Islam. People who said to me, and a number of them were from Canada, no word of a lie. And they said, I don't want to be Muslim. And the parents come and they're crying and they're like, my daughter came and she said she don't want to be Muslim anymore. My son came and he said he's not a Muslim anymore. And they come and you talk to them and they've got like confusion and doubts and everything. But that's not actually the reason why. I'm going to be honest with you. I truly believe that's not the reason why. The reason why is Shaytan commanded them to do fahsha, evil, dirty, filthy, horrible sins. And they did it so much that Shaytan said the only thing holding you back from this ladha, this pleasure, this life is Islam. If you let Islam go, you can do what you want. You can have any kind of relationship you want. You can drink what you want. You can smoke what you want. You can take what you want. You can live what you want. You can spend what you want. You can steal money. You can earn riba. You can do whatever you want. Who cares? The only thing holding you back is Islam. All you have to do is just let go of Islam, and that's it. And so this person lets go of Islam. And when they let go of Islam, Shaytan fills their head with what? With shubuhat, with confusion now. Or Islam is not. I remember I had a really weird conversation with a brother who had left Islam. And he said, I said, why did you leave Islam? And he said, I left Islam because I feel like Islam doesn't give rights to all those alphabetic letters. And I said to him, okay, are you, just be honest with me. Is that what you are? He's like, no, of course not. I have my girlfriend. Like, okay, so why are you leaving Islam then? Like, you really care that much about them? Like that, they're like that's, and you realize it's not true. That's not the reason. The shubha is not the reason. The reason is you want to live your life with no restraints. You want to do what you want, live how you like, and have complete and total freedom. But it's not freedom, it's a deception. It's actually slavery to the Shaytan. But Shaytan tells you it's freedom. So I said, I don't believe you, akhi. I'm sorry, I don't believe you. You're telling me you left Islam because of minority rights. I'm telling you, I don't believe you. If you told me I'm one of those people, I could understand you. You're telling me I'm not. As if he's saying, A'udhu billah. No way, man. Not me. Okay, so why are you leaving Islam for that? You're leaving Islam for another reason. And it's the fact that Shaytan has got you doing so many things, so much desire, and so much evil and so much filth, that actually in the end, you just want to let go. You just want to have no holds barred, unrestricted limit to do whatever you want. And it's got nothing to do with the rights of people. It's got nothing to do with the fact that you think that there's something not mentioned in the Quran, or you tell me that you're worried about what Uthman did with the Quran. You don't have anything you don't care about what Uthman did with the Quran. You just want to go out and party. That's the truth. And you want to not feel guilty about it. And what happened is you used to go out and party before, and used to come home and used to feel guilty. And now you don't want to feel guilty anymore. So the Shaytan tells you to do evil, to take your heart and break the connection between you and Allah. And that's why he doesn't just tell you to do small things. It's not just little haram. He wants you to do really big, filthy, evil haram to cut your heart from Allah. And once you stop that connection with Allah, He'll take you one step and one step and one step, and He'll put confusion and He'll put more desires and more evil, until at the end of the day, you walk away from Islam, and that's what He really wants. What does Allah offer you instead? Allah offers you forgiveness. And even if you did a really big sin, even if you did all the haram we're talking about, Allah offers you maghfirah. Allah says, I'm offering you, I'm promising you, you come to me and I'll forgive you for what you did. And Allah promises you to raise your rank and to make you from the people of virtue and the people of grace, the people who have been given a status in the sight of Allah. Allah promises you this. Allah has everything you want. All of the things that will make you happy are with Allah. But the Shaytan lies to you. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. He only commands you to do evil and immorality and to say about Allah that which you don't know. So the shaitan wants to do what? He wants you to say things about Allah that you don't know. This is a modern trap of the shaitan. People think that shaitan wants you to go drink and have relationships and all of that. That is nothing. That's baby sins compared to the sin of saying something about Allah that you don't know. Some of the ulama said, Akbarul Kabair, the greatest of all the major sins, وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, that you say about Allah what you don't know. So what happens today? Number one, everyone's got an opinion about Islam. Someone, Sarah, doesn't know how to make wudu, can't read Surah Al-Fatiha, like he's got fatwa. For everything, he's got a fatwa for it. And I actually spoke to a brother, Allah bless him, he was talking to me and we were talking about, he was asking me about the beard. And he was talking to me about it and he said, my friend is arguing with me about the beard and he's telling me it's not. And I remembered something that a Shafi'i said, Rahimahullah ta'ala, Wallahi, it's so true. He said, مَا نَظَرْتُ جَاهِلًا إِلَّا غَلَبَنِي وَمَا نَظَرْتُ عَالِمًا إِلَّا غَلَبْتُهُ. He said, I never debated a fool except he won. And I never debated a scholar except I won. Because the problem is, when you give the dalil, this guy is so stupid, he doesn't understand the dalil you've given him. Someone said to me, music is not haram. I said, okay, yalla hat. I gave him an ayah. I said, the ayah says music's haram. He said, that doesn't say music. And I thought of the statement of a Shafi'i. مَا نَظَرْتُ جَاهِلًا إِلَّا غَلَبَنِي. Yani, I can't win the argument because you don't understand anything. I won the argument. I gave you an ayah. I gave you the statement of the Sahaba. I gave you the tafsir of the Salaf. And you just looked at me and said, doesn't say music. You're jahil. I can't win. I can't win the argument because you don't understand when I won. When I speak to a person of knowledge, I give him the ayah. He says, Subhanallah. But what about the statement of Ibn Hazm? And he brings something like it. He recognizes the ayah. He's like, yeah, you got a point, but I've got a point. And you can have a debate with him. But you can't debate an idiot because you'll always lose. Because he doesn't know when you won. You give him a dalil and he looks at you like, you may as well say to him, أَفَلَا يَنظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Don't you see the camels, how they were created? And he look at you, go, that's a good dalil. لأنه لا يفهم. For this is the first example that we see, is people getting involved in things. Akhi, if you're an engineer, I don't tell you how to build a building. If you're a chef, I don't tell you how to cook the meal. If you don't know how to read Fatiha, why are you coming in to give, I've got a fatwa for you, that it's okay to do this and it's halal to do this and I don't believe it's haram. Akhi, at least just stop and say, I don't know. Say, I've got sins, it's my desire, I'm struggling, no problem. But don't say something about the religion of Allah you don't know. The second example, social media. Sharing stuff, getting involved, debates and sharing information, sharing false ahadith, videos. Honestly, if you make a video, and that video, I'm telling you now, if I make 2 videos, and inshallah it won't happen, and I make a video with an authentic hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari, a story, beautiful story, and I make another video with a fabricated hadith that's a lie about the Prophet ﷺ, I honestly believe the lie will get 10 times more views than the one that is authentic. And someone will put a nasheed in the background and everyone will be crying and everyone will be like, oh, this touched my heart. And reality is, it's a kadhib, it's a lie against the Prophet ﷺ. He never said it, not even close. Some of it, la asla lahu, it doesn't even have an isnad. It's just somebody made it up. People are sharing this and saying things about Allah they don't know. The third example, وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِّنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوِ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ. When there comes to them a matter of public interest, safety and security, they spread it around. Ikhwani wallah, what's going on in the world today with the Muslims in Muslim countries, it is painful. And anyone who doesn't find that painful, I believe that person is seriously lacking in faith. If you don't find it painful, what's going on in Palestine and in the world, if you don't see the Muslim situation, and if that doesn't hurt you, I honestly think that you have a serious flaw in your heart, in your faith. But to get yourself involved and open your mouth and start talking about it, and you don't know anything about Sharia, you don't know anything about the rules of the deen, and then what do? Start talking about the scholars, or start talking about the deen, or start giving fatwa. وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Akhi, it hurts me, it hurts you. Like in speaking about it without knowledge is the role of the munafiq. وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِّنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوِ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ. The munafiqeen are the ones who get involved in these issues without knowledge. Our religion is not emotion. Our religion is not about doing things based on emotion. Emotion is there to bring you to Allah and be rewarded for. But emotion doesn't make halal haram and haram halal. For deal with these things with knowledge, not with ignorance. And these are all examples of speaking about the religion of Allah without knowledge. More than that and greater than all of that is to say something about Allah and His asma wa sifat without knowledge. Look at all the people who speak about Allah Azza wa Jal without knowledge, with regard to His names and His attributes and His actions, from the tawa'if and the firaq min ahli bid'ah, the people of innovation, and all the things they said about Allah that were just lies. And they wouldn't say about Allah what He said about Himself and what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about Him. And what happened? I want you to think about this. Allah Azza wa Jal said, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. The most merciful rose above the throne, in a way that's befitting to His majesty and His supremacy and His divinity. He rose above the throne, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Along came a people, Shaytan whispered to them that they tried to actually respect Allah. They wanted to actually respect Allah and to give Allah His haqq. And they wanted to protect the names and attributes of Allah from corruption. And they said, no, it doesn't mean that. It means istawla, He conquered the arsh. Who did He conquer it from? Who did it belong to before Him that He conquered it? And they said about Allah what they didn't know. But Shaytan made them think that it's a really good thing. We're here defending Allah. Like you said about Allah what He didn't say about Himself and what the Rasul ﷺ didn't say about Him. For all of this is from the plots of the Shaytan. If we were to summarize, and I think we'll take a little break after this, maybe we can take like a 10-minute break, because I think I want you guys to still focus on it, and it's a topic. I want to kind of finish this section by talking about the overall plan of the Shaytan. Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, ينحصر شر الشيطان في 6 أجناس لا يزال بابن آدم حتى ينال منه واحدا منها أو أكثر. Ibn al-Qayyim was a genius. Allah have mercy on Ibn al-Qayyim. Ibn al-Qayyim, he said, Shaytan has 6 things. He will not leave you alone until he gets you to do one of them or more. Al-awwalu sharrul kufri wa shirk. The first one is that he wants you to commit kufr, disbelief, and he wants you to commit shirk, make a partner with Allah. That's number 1. Why is that number 1 for him? Because that is for him the jackpot. It means you're going to Jahannam forever and you're never going to come out of it. And that's what he wants from you. What about if it's lesser shirk? Lesser shirk, you don't go to Jahannam forever, but you still guaranteed punishment, and your punishment is guaranteed. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ. Allah doesn't forgive you make a partner with Him, but He forgives whatever is less than that for whoever He wills. So if He can get you to do kufr and shirk, that's what He wants from you. Because that for Him is the jackpot. That means He won. Because now you're with Him, Ashab al-Sa'ir, the people of the burning fire. ثُمَّ الْبِدْعَةِ. Then innovation. Why bid'ah? Bid'ah is the greatest of the major sins that come after shirk and kufr. But it has something particular about it, why the shaitan loves it so much, is that you think you're doing good. So remember, bid'ah is a religious action, a belief or an action in your religion that you are doing to get closer to Allah, but you're doing it in opposition to the Prophet ﷺ. That innovation you're doing, do you think you're going to repent from it? It's very rare that a person repents. You can repent from kufr and shirk, but it's rare a person repents because they believe that they're doing something amazing. They believe they're doing something that is the best thing that a person can do. That's what they believe. And so the person does more and more and more because they think that they're getting closer and closer and closer to Allah. If He can't get you to do that, ثُمَّ كَبَائِرْ ذُنُوبٍ. ثُمَّ كَبَائِرْ الذُّنُوبِ. Then the major sins. Because the major sins are now serious things that deserve punishment. ثُمَّ صَغَائِرُهَا. Then the lesser sins. Why does He want to get you to do the lesser sins then? The Prophet ﷺ said, إِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحَقَّرَاتِ الذُّنُوبِ فإنهن يجتمعن على الرجل حتى يهلكنه وإن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ضرب لهن مثلا كمثل قوم نزلوا أرض فلاه فحضر صنيع القوم فجعل الرجل ينطلق فيجيء بالعود والرجل يجيء بالعود حتى جمعوا سوادا فأججوا نارا وانضجوا ما قذفوا فيها وأنضجوا ما قذفوا فيها. The Prophet ﷺ said, be careful, beware of the small sins that people think are insignificant, because they gather upon a person until they destroy him. And the Messenger of Allah ﷺ gave an example, like a people who came to a desert plain, and their food came. They wanted to cook the food. So one man went out and he brought a twig, and the other man went out and brought a twig, and the other man brought a twig, until they had made a huge pile. فَأَجَّجُوا نَارًا. Then they set the fire, they made it on fire. وَأَنْضَجُوا مَا قَذَفُوا فِيهَا. And they burnt what was inside of it. That's the example of the small sins. Just keep on putting one more twig and one more twig and one more twig until it turns into a big fire. So the shaitan finishes there, right? He doesn't. ثُمَّ الْإِشْتِغَالُ بِالْمُبَاحَاتِ عَنِ الْخَيْرِ. He's so jealous of you that he doesn't stop. He says after that, he will get you to do halal things. Shaitan tells you to do halal things. Shaitan tells you to do halal things instead of doing good things. Instead of doing things that are rewarded, he tells you, let's go eat at a restaurant. Say, I'm just going to finish my Quran. No, come. We'll eat. You finish Quran later. So you're doing something halal. You're eating halal food, halal restaurant, halal environment. But he took you away from some khair that you wanted to do. But does he stop there? No, he doesn't. ثم بالعمل المفضول عن الفاضل. Then he tells you to do good deeds. Shaytan tells you to do good deeds. But he tells you to do good deeds that are less than other good deeds. So for example, he tells you pray. But he says just pray at home. You don't need to go to the masjid. You can just pray at home. Masjid's good, yeah, but it's a bit far, it's cold outside. Just pray at home. So he tells you to pray at home instead of praying in the masjid. Why does he bother? Number one, because of his extreme jealousy and hatred. And number two, because his hope is that he'll lead you step by step back through those stages. So you start praying at home, then he says, instead of doing good, you be busy with your gaming or your phone or you're reading the news or you're just busy, just busy doing stuff that doesn't get you reward. Then you go into the minor sins, maybe you start using it for something little bit haram, then you go into the major sins, and then his hope is that he can get you eventually into al-kufr wa shirk, and if not, at least he can take you down in Jannah, and if he can get some kind of punishment to happen to you Yawm al-Qiyamah, he wants to hurt you as much as possible. And the ajib thing is, he leaves you alone in your misery. Like Allah Azza wa Jal said, كَمَثَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِذْ قَالَ لِلْإِنسَانِ اكْفُرْ فَلَمَّا كَفَرَ قَالَ إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِّنْكَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Like the shaitan when he says to a person, disbelieve. And when they disbelieve, he says, I've got nothing to do with you, I'm scared of Allah, the Lord of the worlds. He wants to cover your heart. He doesn't want your heart to go back to Allah. كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. He wants your heart to be sealed. He wants your heart to be covered. And so he'll take you through these steps. And in this, remember the story of the people of Nuh. عليه وعلى نبينا الصلاة والسلام. These people, they were righteous people. 10 generations after Adam, they all worshipped Allah. They were righteous people. Among them were some very righteous, like very, very religious people. And those people, like everyone, they died. And when they died, the shaitan came to their people who were left behind and said, don't you miss them? They said, yeah, these were righteous people. They used to remind us of good, and they used to tell us to do good, and they were inspiration for us. We miss them. So Shaitan says, why don't you put a picture so you can remember these people, and you'll remember the good they did, and you'll remember how they used to worship Allah, and you can be inspired. So in your majlis where you all sit together, put a picture of one of those righteous people. And then afterwards, the shaitan came after a while and said, pictures don't cut it. If you made a statue, you would really connect yourself as though they were there in front of you. So they made a statue. But of course they didn't worship the statue or pray to the statue or make dua to the statue, nothing. Then the shaitan came to their children and said, your fathers used to worship these statues, so you should worship these statues to get close to Allah, not worship them instead of Allah. You should worship these statues to get you close to Allah. And this is how idol worship entered into the world. Shaitan is willing to play a very long game. He's willing to wait, not just to misguide you. Even if he doesn't get you, he'll get your kids. If he doesn't get your kids, he's willing to get your grandkids or your great-grandkids. He's willing to take his time and he's willing to vary his method and to adapt his plots. And that is why the Shaytan doesn't use the same plot with the abid as he does with the fasiq or the asi. So here you have a worshipper and you have a sinner. The Shaytan wants both of them in the fire. So what does he do to the sinner? He encourages him to do more sins and more sins and more sins and bigger sins and everything like that, kindles his desires. But the abid is a worshipper. He doesn't have that desire to do that haram. So instead the Shaytan comes to him from the root of bid'ah, to worship Allah in a way that the Prophet ﷺ didn't do it, because then you're going to really feel the spirit of ibadah, of ubudiyyah, of servitude. And so the abid has a different plot to the asi. The worshipper is different to the sinner. And even yourself, when you leave a sin, maybe the Shaytan calls you back to it. Maybe the Shaytan leaves that sin for you and takes you to something else. He doesn't stop. So you mustn't stop trying to resist the plots of the Shaytan. The plots of the Shaytan and the traps of the Shaytan all come back to two fundamental sicknesses. And these two are mentioned at the end of Surah Al-Ahzab, in which Allah Azza wa Jal said, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. We offered the responsibility of implementing the Sharia to the heavens and to the earth and to the mountains. فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا. They refused to take on this responsibility. وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا. And they were fearful of it. وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانِ. Mankind took it on. إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. He was extremely oppressive and extremely ignorant. My brothers and sisters, these are the two traps of the Shaytan, that all the traps of the Shaytan come back to these two. الظلم والجهل. Oppression and ignorance. Oppression is what we term desires. The person knows that it's wrong. وَضْعُ الشَّيْءِ فِي غَيْرِ مَوْضِعِهِ. The person knows it's wrong. He knows it's wrong. She knows it's wrong. But they go ahead and do it anyway. And this is al-dhulm. Ash-shahawat. And then there is ash-shubuhat. Confusion and misconceptions and false ideas. And this is al-jahlu, ignorance. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, al-qalbu, the heart, يعترضه مرضان يتواردان عليه إذا استحكم فيه كان هلاكه وموته. He said the heart has two sicknesses that come about and they happen to the heart. if they become completely fixed in the heart, the person will be destroyed and their heart is dead. وَهُمَا مَرَضُ الشَّهَوَاتِ وَمَرَضُ الشُّبُهَاتِ. They are the sickness of desires and the sickness of shubuhat. We're going to call it misconceptions and false ideas. هذا أصل داء الخلق إلا من عافاه الله. This is the fundamental sicknesses. These sicknesses, this is what makes people sick, except the one Allah keeps them safe from it. So we understood that all of the traps of the shaitan come back to two fundamental traps. The first one is ash-shahwa. And ash-shahwa is your desire. And the reality of your desire is that you know it's wrong. You know that what you're doing is wrong. You know it's not allowed in Islam. But you do it because there's a pleasure involved in doing it. This is dhulmun. It's oppression. Because it is وَضْعُ الشَّيْءِ فِي غَيْرِ مَوْضِعِهِ. You know where this belongs. You know it belongs in the category of sin. Why are you doing it? Because it has a pleasure for you. And the second one is a shubha. And a shubha, it comes from the sheen and the ba and the ha. What do they mean? A sheen wal ba wal ha means resemblance, right? Resemblance, we say, al-waladu yushbihu abahu. The child resembles his father. Why is a shubha called a shubha? Because it has a resemblance to the truth. Sometimes we might call it in English a grain of truth. Let me give you an example. A person worshipping the sun instead of Allah. Would we call this a shubha? We wouldn't. There's no resemblance to the truth. It's just batil, it's just falsehood. But what about a person who asks Allah through the righteous people because they have a status in the sight of Allah? Or he asks Allah through the status of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why do we call this a shubha? Because the Prophet does have a status, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the righteous people are righteous, it's true, but it's just not allowed to make dua to them. So it has a grain of truth. It's false. You guys all with me? It's false, but it has a tiny, tiny grain of truth in it that makes the person get confused. He says, but righteous people are righteous. That's true. But those righteous people don't deserve worship. So there's something there that confuses the person and gets them mixed up. And we call this al-jahlu, ignorance. So shaitan either comes at you through desire or through ignorance. Either he comes at you through getting you to do something you know that it's wrong because you enjoy it, or getting you to do something because you think it might not be wrong, or you're not sure, or you're confused about it. Let me give you an example of the same thing, once from the angle of ash-shahwa and once from the angle of ash-shubha. Let's take the issue of al-riba, for example. One person he knows that this contract or this loan is haram. It's a riba-based loan. But Shaytan tells him, if you don't take it, you're going to be poor. Look, you need to live in a nice house and it's important. And just, I know it's haram, but sometimes you just have to do stuff. And so his desires have overcome him. And he does it and he says, I know it's riba and I know it's haram, but you know what it is? I just didn't have a choice and it was necessary for me and I had to try and I just, okay, I know it's wrong, but Allah forgive me, ask Allah to forgive me, that's what I could do. The other person comes and says, I don't believe this contract is riba. Or says, I believe that riba is permitted for one house only if you're living in the West. In Darul Kufr, you're allowed to take riba for one house. Is that true? It's not true. But the person believes it. They heard a fatwa and they got themselves confused that in Darul Kufr, in a place among the non-Muslims, you're allowed to take riba for one house. Both of them took the same riba. One of them knew it was haram, but his desires overcame him. The other one still thinks that, well, I don't know if it's haram or not, but I think I read a fatwa and the sheikh said it's okay. And both of them did the same sin. Everything the shaitan does to you, every trap the shaitan lays for you is either from one of these two things. And so now we can talk about how to overcome these two great traps. And from it, how to overcome every trap. First of all, I want you to understand something before we start this discussion, and that is I want you to understand that Allah has complete and total power over every single thing, including the shaitan. So I don't want you to ever think that the shaitan will ever be victorious against Allah, or that the shaitan has some kind of authority or control besides Allah. وَإِذْ زَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ وَقَالَ لَا غَالِبَ لَكُمُ الْيَوْمَ مِنَ النَّاسِ وَإِنِّي جَارٌ لَكُمْ فَلَمَّا تَرَاءَتِ الْفِئَتَانِ نَكَصَ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ وَقَالَ إِنِّي بريء منكم إني أرى ما لا ترون إني أخاف الله والله الشديد العقاب. When the shaitan made their deeds seem good to them. This is one of the traps of the shaitan. Shaitan makes things look good that aren't good. How many times do people justify the haram, right? People say something that the people do that's evil, and people see it as something good. And Shaitan says to the kuffar of Quraysh, no one's gonna defeat you today in the battle of Badr. No one is gonna defeat you today. I'm standing right next to you. I'm gonna fight with you. I'm gonna be your defender. I'm gonna be your protector. I'm gonna bring my army. We're gonna fight against these few tiny number of Muslims all together. When the shaitan saw the two armies, or the two armies saw each other and the shaitan was there and the two armies saw each other, he ran away. He turned on his heels and he ran away and he said, I am nothing to do with you people. I can see what you can't see. And I can see the angels in ranks and I'm scared of Allah, and he ran away. That shows you the reality of the shaitan, right? That he doesn't have power. He told them, don't worry, I'm standing right next to you. Me and you, we're going to either live together or die together. As soon as he saw the angels, ma'asalama, see you guys later. I'll be back in a while. And he let them get killed. He said, I can see what you can't see. I'm scared of Allah. So don't ever think that the shaitan is going to win this battle. If we said, that the traps of the shaitan, all of them come back to shubuhat and shahawat. They come back to misconceptions and confusion and a lack of knowledge, or they come back to desires and oppression and doing what you know to be wrong. And by the way, from the evidences of this is the ayat we read every single rak'ah of every single prayer. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. هو المغضوب عليهم, not speaking about the religious group. هو المغضوب عليهم, what is their صفة? ما صفتهم? It is that they know what they're doing is wrong, but they do it anyway. And هو الضالين, not the group, but who are, what's their ما صفتهم? What's their description? They're the people who don't know what they're doing. So Allah told you all evil, everything that takes you away from the Sirat al-Mustaqim is either doing something you know to be wrong or not knowing the difference between right and wrong. And the Yahud they became known for the first one, and the Nasara became known for the second, even though both of them have it. Both the Yahud and the Nasara have both, but they became famous for the first one. Famous for knowing it's wrong, but doing it anyway. And that's why we see them until today, they haven't changed. Knowing something it's wrong and doing it anyway. And the Nasara not knowing the difference between what's right and wrong, and just worshipping Allah upon jahl, upon ignorance. So now what is it? What weapon do you have by which you can fight against shubuhat? It is al-ilmun nafi'. It's beneficial knowledge. Knowledge of your religion is what protects you by Allah's permission from confusion and misconception and doubt. That's why a person might watch, and I would never encourage you to do this, but a person might watch a video of, I give an example. I was talking to someone again from this whole atheism and people who wanted to leave Islam. And I asked them, who was your inspiration in leaving Islam? And they mentioned this particular Christian monk kind of thing. It's an online monk. Look at that. Is that not a contradiction? Anyway, it's an online monk. And to be honest, they were like, their arguments are so convincing. And I looked at it and I thought, wallahi, these arguments are like Subyan al-Kuttab. It's like nursery school. It's like kindergarten level arguments. And I'm not that knowledgeable. The point is a little bit of knowledge, and you listen to it and you're like, they think they won't. Like I was speaking to a Christian missionary just the other day in Canada. I was speaking to a Christian missionary who came to speak to me, and he came to me and he's like, I got you. Now you don't have an answer. It's like, look, Uthman got rid of the Quran, and now you've got a Hafs Quran and a Warsh Quran and a Khalaf Quran. I thought, I was honestly thinking, is this really worth me actually opening my mouth to say? That's an argument that even somebody who studied Ulum al-Quran for 2 days knows that argument is completely false from beginning to end, and he's mixed up like 3 totally different things and put them all together and just got himself confused. The point is a little bit of knowledge, and suddenly that shubha actually looks like the easiest thing to answer in the world. Don't expose yourself to them. Don't expose yourself. Don't go looking for them, because you don't know you're going to be safe. But a little bit of knowledge, and suddenly that shubha looks like something very small. That's why, and I'm not saying to you about me, I'm actually going to say to you, when I get a shubha that I feel could touch my heart, I go to one of my mashayikh. And I remember in the Jami'ah, when I was in the university, there was some doubts and things, some people were raising them, like shubahat. And I remember going to Shaykh Salih al-Sindi, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, asking the Shaykh, And the sheikh wouldn't even bother looking at a book. Yeah, he didn't even I'm giving him this complex, really difficult thing that someone said to Sheikh, what is it? Sheikh, do you need to research? He's like, research. 60 seconds, and I'm thinking, I was such an idiot to even think that was difficult. 60 seconds, just 1, 2, 3, finished. And that's why, subhanAllah, the more knowledge you have, the more these shubuhat just dissolve and disappear. But you never feel safe, because part of taqwa is being scared for your deen, being scared that you might lose it. You don't feel safe. You don't say, nobody can defeat me, no one can bring me a doubt, no one can cause me to slip. But the more knowledge you have, the better your answer is. Now here I'm going to give you a benefit. There are 2 ways to answer a shubha. And this might just save a person's deen by Allah's permission. So think really carefully and convey it to people. There are two ways. There is jawabun mujmal and jawabun mufassal. There's a generic answer and there's a specific answer. Now, what do I mean by that? This is very important. Many times you might not know the full answer to an issue that's presented to you. Someone says there's a hadith which says ... Or someone says, don't you know that Uthman did ... Don't you know that Abu Bakr did ... Don't you know that Islam allows you to do X, Y, Z? And you don't have any answer to it. At this time, what you need is enough knowledge to know that it's wrong, but not to know why it's wrong. And that's what we call al-jawab al-mujmal, a generic answer. You have enough knowledge to know it's wrong. For example, someone says to you, Islam oppresses women with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For example, Islam oppresses women because the inheritance of a woman is half that of a man. And you didn't study inheritance, you've got no idea, you didn't memorize the ayat in Surah An-Nisa, you're sat there thinking, I don't know what this inheritance thing is and I don't know why. But you do know one thing. وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا. Your Lord will never oppress anyone. That is your jawab mujmal. It doesn't give you the detailed answer, it doesn't answer the issue of inheritance, but it gives you enough to know that it's definitely wrong. I don't know what you're saying to me, I don't know about inheritance, I don't know the ayat, but I know you have to be wrong because I know that Allah doesn't oppress anyone. What you're saying might be true about inheritance, might be wrong about inheritance, you might be misquoting, mistranslating, you might be telling the truth, but I don't understand the wisdom for it. But I know there's no way that Islam oppresses anyone, male or female. It's impossible. Is that answer enough? It's enough temporarily to allow you to breathe, to allow you to go and get the answer. It's not enough in the long run to answer that question. You come to someone to answer that question and they gave you jawabun mufassal. The first thing is they said that I don't agree with you that in every situation the inheritance of a woman is less than a man. Rather, in the ayat you are quoting to me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the person who dies and doesn't leave behind a child and then says for the mother is فَلِأُمِّهِ ثُلُث. The mother gets a third. So I don't agree with you. Yani we're just now talking about a situation. I don't agree with your premise in the beginning that a woman gets always half of what a man gets or always gets less than what a man gets. Rather, in the situation of certain brothers and sisters, they get the same amount. In situations, the mother gets more than some of the male relatives. I don't agree with you in the first place. That's my first answer. My second answer is, what is an obligation upon the man from that inheritance and what is the obligation upon the woman? The man, he has to spend upon who? He has to spend upon his daughters, his wife, sisters, he spends upon his family. That woman, what does she have to spend that money upon? Handbags and shoes if she wants to. She has no obligation to spend it on anyone other than herself. This is just, we're not going into detail. I'm just saying that if you didn't know that answer, that's fine. If you didn't know that answer, no problem. But you knew it's impossible for there to be dhulm upon anyone in Islam. We just don't understand the rules. And then you got an answer and said, first of all, your premise where you said to me that the inheritance of a woman is always less than a man, I don't agree with that. And I can give you halat where it isn't. So I think your entire premise is false. Then on top of that, that money is entirely hers. Whereas that man, very likely, that money he has to spend upon her. So in fact, you could get a situation where you got two people, a man and a woman who inherit. She inherits, let's say, for example, $100,000 and he inherits $200,000. And then he spends on her and she just sits there saving the money. وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا. Your Lord doesn't oppress anybody. So the point is, I didn't know the answer to all that. Maybe there's a better answer than that. I'm just giving you an example. But here, you knew that Allah doesn't oppress anyone, so you knew it had to be wrong. And that was enough to get you to somebody who will give you the proper answer. And that proper answer then got rid of the shubha and it died. And somebody brings another shubha and the same thing goes. Now the second thing, which is what? Which is desires. How do you overcome your desires? Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. As for the one who's scared of the maqam, what is the maqam? The maqam, the scholars of tafsir say, is two things. The maqam is al-qiyamu bayna yaday Allahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, standing in front of Allah yawm al-qiyamah. He's scared of standing in front of Allah. And the maqam is Allah's status. Because you say the maqam, someone is there, their status, their high position. So he's scared of Allah's names and attributes. He's scared of what Allah describes himself with. He's scared of Allah's description of himself as swift in punishment and quickly to take people to account. So he's scared of that, and he's scared of the qiyamah. And he prohibits his soul from what it desires. Jannah will be his destination. Ibn al-Qayyim, and it's quite a long quote, but wallahi this quote amazed me, and I heard this quote from Shaykh Abdul Razak al-Badr, hafidhahullah ta'ala, and I heard that the Shaykh was quoting just a part of it. Like, I took the whole quote of Ibn al-Qayyim, and I think he just nailed it, exactly how to overcome your desires. He said, وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ غَلِطَ فِي تَحْصِيلِ هَذَا الْمَطْلُوبِ المحبوب النافع إما في عدم تصوره ومعرفته وإما في عدم معرفة الطريق الموصلة إليه فهذان غلطان سببهما الجهل ويتخلص منهما بالعلم. He said, most people made errors in achieving this beloved goal, which will benefit them, either because they don't have an understanding of what it is they're going for. They don't know, they don't have an understanding of what they're trying to achieve, or they don't know how to get it. So as an example, a person doesn't know about Jannah and Jahannam, or knows about Jannah and Jahannam but doesn't know the good deeds that bring you to Jannah, or doesn't know the haram that takes you to Jahannam. He said these two errors, the reason for them is ignorance. And you can get rid of them by knowledge. وَقَدْ يَحْصُلُ لَهُ الْعِلْمُ بِالْمَطْلُوبِ وَالْعِلْمُ بِطَرِيقَتِهِ لكن في قلبه إرادات وشهوات تحول بينه وبين قصد هذا المطلوب النافع. Now he comes to the second point. He said the person might have knowledge. So he knows Jannah and he knows the way to get it. But in his heart, there are some wishes and desires that come between him and between this thing that he knows about, that he knows how to get it. This beneficial thing. وَسُلُوكِ طَرِيقِهِ, and the road that will take him to it. فَكُلَّمَا أَرَادَ ذَلِكَ اعترضته تلك الشهوات والإرادات وحالت بينه وبينه. Every time he wants to get this thing, for example, Jannah, or he wants to be from those people who does his prayers, and he tries to set out on the road, these desires come in the way and these wishes come in the way, and they become a barrier between him and between the benefit that he's trying to get. وَهُوَ لَا يُمْكِنُهُ تَرْكُهَا وَتَقْدِيمُ هَذَا الْمَطْلُوبِ عَلَيْهَا إِلَّا بِأَحَدِ أَمْرَيْنِ. He said it's not possible for him to leave them and to prefer the thing that he's aiming for over them, for example, Jannah, except because of two things. So did we understand what Ibn al-Qayyim said? He said, people went astray either because they don't know what they're going for, or they don't know how to get there. And that's ignorance. And there could be someone who knows what they're going for and they know how to get there, but they have desires that come in the way, and he can't overcome those desires, and he can't prefer what he's going for example, Jannah, over this desire unless he has two things. And this statement, wallahi, if you memorize it, I think you made a benefit of your time. This, what he says here. إِمَّا حُبٌّ مُتَعَلِّقٌ وَإِمَّا فرق مزعج. He said, either he has to have love or he has to have fear. He has to have either some kind of love that drives him forward or some kind of fear that holds him back. So, what does this mean? He said, for Allah and the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Dar al-Akhirah and Jannah and the pleasure of it be more beloved to him than this desire. That's the first thing. So he's got something in his heart where Allah and what he's going to get in Jannah and the rewards of Jannah mean more to him than that desire. Or he knows وَإِمَّا أَنْ يَحْصُلَ لَهُ عِلْمُ ما يترتب على إيثار هذه الشهوات من المخاوف والآلام. Either he has knowledge of what's going to happen to him if he does this sin. He knows the fearful things, the punishments of the grave, the torment that can happen to him, that which makes him feel a pain which cuts off that desire. And it's more of a pain than the pain of losing that desire that he's aiming for, or that came into his heart. So if he can have in his heart these two things, he's going to prefer the Dar al-Akhirah and what is with Allah over this desire. I want to give you an example so we understand a little bit clearly what Ibn al-Qayyim said. Let's just say, in the topic of fear, and I'll try to just give a really like a simple example. A person gets into or thinks about a haram relationship. And the person he's thinking about, she's a very, very beautiful woman. And just as he is about to enter into that haram, he finds out that she has a very, very bad disease that could lead him to be crippled, or it could lead him to become impotent, or it could lead him to have all kinds of medical problems. Suddenly his desire is gone. Why? Because he's more scared of what might happen to him than he loves what he might do. Does that make sense? And before he knew about that, he was all in favor. But then he was like, I could be something really bad could happen to me. And he's more worried about that bad than he is about that. What about on the other side? The same example. Someone is about to enter into a haram relationship. Except that this person is told about another girl who is more beautiful, who has better manners and background and all of that, who is waiting to marry him the week after. And so he decides to leave this one because his love for the one that is coming next week is more than the love for that desire that he's about to enter into. And this is just what we call taqreeb al-fahm, and to make people understand easily what we're talking about. If you have a fear, enough of a fear of something, you suddenly don't want to do the other thing. And if you have enough of a love of something else which is coming, that love of something else will be more than that desire to do something that's wrong. For if a person can have in their heart, and this is where knowledge comes back again, enough knowledge about Allah and His names and attributes and actions, and the knowledge of Jannah and Jahannam, and the knowledge of the pleasures of Jannah and the punishments of Jahannam, that which would make the person love to prefer those things over his sin, then this person can overcome those shahawat. And that's why I had an amazing, fantastic conversation with a doctor, consultant psychiatrist who specializes in addictions. And he was saying to me that, addictions, like he specializes in drug addiction. And he was telling me, addictions are like a lifelong thing, and, people should be prepared that, your brain changes and your whole life, you are very likely to be susceptible to that addiction. And it's very, very hard to overcome because the changes in your brain are such that, it's a lifelong struggle to give up that drug. But he said, the one thing that is proven to actually be, and I'm paraphrasing, but like the one thing that is proven to be successful time and time again in quitting those addictions is religion. Because it's something that's more powerful than the addiction to that drug. So it's one of the few things that is consistently seen in the world of addiction counseling and treatment, that people who have a strong religious belief have a much greater chance of getting rid of that addiction, because their religious belief can be something more powerful than even that addiction that has taken over their mind and changed their brain and everything. It can be even more powerful than that. If we understood this, then the first thing that we need to do is to analyze where we went wrong. Is the shaitan in this issue I'm thinking about getting at me through shubuhat or shahawat? Is the shaitan affecting me here because I'm confused? Like we said, the person who's cutting his beard and saying, I don't think it's really haram, and like it doesn't, the Prophet ﷺ never said that, and it's not, I read some scholar said this is not the beard and that's not the beard, and he's confused. Or is it the person knows fine well what they're doing, but they're doing it anyway? Analyze, where did you go wrong and how did you get there? There's a hadith, it's really, really scary hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ said that every child of Adam will commit zina. La mahala, there's no escape. That's shocking, huh? Every single son of Adam will commit zina. La mahala, there's no way out of it. Then he explained the zina of the eye, of the ear, of the hand, of the foot, and then either you follow it up or you don't. Does that make sense? The point here is, look at how the small thing leads to the bigger one. Someone's in this really haram relationship and all kind of stuff is happening. Can you ask yourself, how did I get here? And what is the answer? A look, a listen, a step, a touch. You went down a road that started somewhere. If you could stop what started there, then maybe bi'ithnillahi ta'ala you can stop where it ended up. And that's why when we talk about things like ikhtilat, mixing between men and women, and people say, what's the big deal? And why are you making such a big deal of it? There's nothing going on, there's no relationship going on. You didn't understand. You didn't understand the traps of the shaitan. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, don't come close to zina. Do everything. If I can stop men and women mixing together, then maybe I can stop someone looking, and then maybe I can stop someone walking, and then maybe I can stop someone touching, and then maybe I can stop that person from falling into something that will ruin their dunya and their akhirah. For Islam came with sadd al-dhara'i, stopping the things that lead you to something else, to something else, to something else. And part of that is analyzing where you went wrong. In any sin you did, how did I end up here? And sometimes, for example, many people in the modern world, from the traps of the shaitan, I'm not going to lie to you, is this phone. How much evil came to you, how many sins came to you on this mobile phone? And the mobile phone is not in itself haram. I'm not saying that I don't know anybody who says the mobile phone fi haddi dhatihi is haram. But how much evil came into your life, and how many times did you destroy yourself, and how many times did you destroy your relationship with Allah and send your iman plummeting down because of this phone that's in your pocket? In so many ways. Looking at things you shouldn't be, communicating with people you shouldn't be, all different types of things. We said speaking about Allah without knowledge, all different kinds of things that came to you through this phone. Would it not make sense to think about controlling your phone? And maybe, for example, as an example, putting it, one of the things we do is we have a box at home. When everyone goes in the door, the phone goes in the box, we close the box. That means no one's using their phone for haram at night, because no one's using their phone at night at all. No one is using their phone at night, so there's no one using it for haram, because no one's using it at night. And shockingly, you may be shocked, but nobody died overnight when they put their phone in the box. The world didn't end. It's okay sometimes to switch off your phone. And sometimes it stops you from a lot of haram. It could be something simple, like a person having their phone with them at night, or having their phone and taking it with them everywhere, and they take it, they take it all around, taking the bathroom, and they're with it all the time, they've got it with them. Ikhwani, maybe it's a simple thing of just putting your phone on the desk outside and not taking it with you everywhere, and suddenly that problem starts to, and that trap of the shaitan starts to reduce. And maybe it's even before that. What's the reason you open your phone, start looking for haram? Is it not because this wasn't looking at the ground? Instead of looking at the ground, it was staring around and it saw something, and then shaitan whispered to you to Google for something and look for something, and then it got worse. But look where you went wrong. Look where you went wrong and fix it before it now goes all the way to something worse and worse and worse. We take a question after. And then fight against the shaitan. Ibn al-Qayyim, he said, وَأَمَّا جِهَادُ الشَّيْطَانِ فَمَرْتَبَتَانِ. He said fighting against the shaitan is two levels. إحداهما جهاده على دفع ما يلقي إلى العبد من الشبهات والشكوك القادحة في الإيمان. The first one is fighting against the shaitan to repel the doubts and the confusion which affects your iman. We spoke about that. والثانية جهاده على دفع ما يلقي إليه من الإرادات والشهوات. The second one is fighting against him to repel the desires and the cravings that shaitan puts into you. He said, فَالْجِهَادُ الْأَوَّلِ يَكُونُ بِعُدَّةِ الْيَقِينِ وَالثَّانِي بِعُدَّةِ الصَّبْرِ. And Ibn al-Qayyim is something else. Listen to this. He said the first battle against the shaitan is through yaqeen. Didn't we say there's a general answer, which is the yaqeen that it can't possibly be like that? Did we not say that? And the second one is to use the weapon of patience. And then he quoted the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. That's fahm al-Quran. That's what it means to understand the Quran. He said the evidence, we made among them imams, examples to be followed, who were guided by our command when they were patient and when they had certainty in our ayat. The certainty saved them from confusion and misconceptions, and the patience saved them from their desires. He said, فَأَخْبَرَ أَنَّ إِمَامَةَ الدِّينِ إِنَّمَا تُنَالُ بِالصَّبْرِ وَالْيَقِينِ فَالصَّبْرُ يَدْفَعُ الشَّهَوَاتِ وَالْإِرَادَاتِ وَالْيَقِينِ يَدْفَعُ الشُّكُوكِ وَالشُّبُهَاتِ. He said, Allah told us that to be an imam in the religion, you only get it through patience and certainty. Patience stops you from confusion. Patience stops you from desires and cravings. And certainty stops you from doubts and misconceptions. You have to be more patient than the shaitan. And patience, ikhwani, is three types. Patience in doing good deeds, and patience in keeping away from the haram, and patience in what Allah decrees for you to happen to you in your life from the difficulties and troubles. From the means of repelling the traps of the shaitan is to be patient in your salah. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah inna Allaha ma'as-sabirin. O you who believe, seek Allah's help by being patient and by praying. Indeed, Allah is with the sabirin. Is prayer a solution for shahawat or shubuhat? Both. You ask Allah to guide you, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, so Allah guides you from those confusion and misconceptions. And when you pray, inna as-salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, the prayer stops you from doing immoral actions and stops you from doing evil. And the prayer is the greatest example of dhikr. And Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَمَن يَعْشُ عَن ذِكْرِ الرَّحْمَنِ نُقَيِّضْ لَهُ شَيْطَانًا فَهُوَ لَهُ قَرِينٌ. Whoever turns away from the remembrance of the Most Merciful, we appoint for him a shaitan, and he becomes a companion to the shaitan, or the shaitan becomes a companion to him. And Allah Azza wa Jal said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا إِذَا مَسَّهُمْ طَائِفٌ مِّنَ الشَّيْطَانِ تَذَكَّرُوا فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. Indeed, those people of taqwa, people who fear Allah and practice their religion, if they are getting an impulse from shaitan, if shaitan is telling them to do something, they remember it's from the shaitan and they remember Allah, and then they can see clearly. Expecting the reward in fighting the shaitan. Didn't Ibn al-Qayyim call it jihad? Fighting the shaitan, fighting your desires, fighting your nafs, fighting against the doubts, putting light on it and clarifying to people the things that are confusing the young people. We talked about one of the goals of the center. Didn't we say one of the goals of the center was to help the young kids who are getting confused? That's part of fighting the shaitan. And helping people to overcome their desires and their addictions and the bad behaviors that they're falling into. And expecting Allah's reward for that. My dear brothers and sisters, honestly, this topic is big. And I couldn't bring you every single example of the traps of the shaitan, or every single individual, you can say every single individual example of it or permutation of it. We couldn't. But sometimes you mention a little bit to teach people a lot. So the idea is that you get a little bit here and you apply it to any of the traps of the shaitan in the world today. But I want you to think about an ayah that we read earlier. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ إِنَّ وَعْدَ اللَّهِ حَقٌّ فَلَا تَغُرَّنَّكُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَلَا يَغُرَّنَّكُمْ بِاللَّهِ الْغَرُورُ. O mankind, the promise of Allah is true. Don't let yourself be deceived by this world. Don't let the trap of the shaitan be in making you become deceived by this world. You think you're going to live forever. You think that nothing bad's going to happen to you. You think your iman is guaranteed. You think that you're just going to do this haram and you're going to come out of it. You're going to make tawbah. You're going to change later on. You're going to change in Ramadan. Don't allow yourself to become deceived by this world, and don't allow yourself to become deceived by the great deceiver, the great liar, the one who always breaks his promise. ذاك الشيطان. That's the shaitan. And that's what Allah Azza wa Jal made easy for me to mention. Now I do want to leave some time for questions. And I did promise the brothers now, there are a couple of points there were a couple of questions came to me in the break. And they were really good questions. And one was actually a comment. To think about the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal regarding Adam, because Adam was led astray when the shaitan whispered to him. And I want you to notice something, lil fa'ida. Have you noticed that Allah Azza wa Jal never blamed Hawa on her own? See the difference between Islam and Christianity, huh? It's Eve's fault that Adam ate the tree. I don't find a single evidence in the Quran that Allah blamed her on her own. Either Allah blamed Adam by himself or Allah blamed the two of them together. But I don't find one ayah or one evidence where Allah Azza wa Jal blamed her on her own. And that's from the justice of Islam. Ala kulli hal, when Adam was tricked by the shaitan, فَوَسْوَسَ إِلَيْهِ الشَّيْطَانِ. The shaitan gave waswasa to him and he ate from the tree. Allah Azza wa Jal said, فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ. Adam took some words from his Lord, فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ, and Allah forgave him because of these words. What were the words that Allah took from his Lord? رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ وَإِلَّا تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Our Lord, we oppressed ourselves. And if you don't forgive us and have mercy on us, we will surely be from the losing people. For that's a big fa'idah, yani. From the dhikr that uncovers the traps of the shaitan is to turn back to Allah in istighfar and to ask Allah's forgiveness if you followed one of those traps and you fell into one of those traps. There was another question that a brother asked me in the break, which was a really good question. And it's just temporarily gone from my mind, so I'll take a couple of others, inshallah. Now, I want to ask a question myself before I take it from the brothers. For the sisters' questions, do we have like something they can ask and they put paper or something, if they want to? Maybe they can, and maybe someone will just put the questions here. Yeah? Oh, there's a volunteer. Okay, maybe they just put them over here and I'll take them, inshallah ta'ala. For those who would like to write them down. Habib, you were putting your hand up for a long time. Forgive me because I was in the middle of the class and then that's why. It's a very good question. People say that Shaytan was an angel, but angels are supposed to respect Allah. So how could he have done what he did? The answer is he wasn't an angel. It's a wrong idea that comes from a mistake in understanding the word illa in Arabic. Some people think, like English, when you say except, normally you're speaking about two of the same thing. Like you say, all of the students left except Muhammad. Yani Muhammad was a student. But in Arabic, we have something called al-istithna al-munqati', which is where you make an exception for something that's nothing to do with the other thing. So you say, all the students left except the teacher. Or you say, for example, all the players left except the fans. That's normal in Arabic. It's just because English we don't say it, people misunderstood it. But in Arabic, Allah Azza wa Jal clearly said, كَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ. He was a jinni, not an angel. And he disobeyed the command of his Lord. So he wasn't an angel. That's the answer to your excellent question. May Allah bless you. Brilliant. So how do you counteract waswasa, particularly when it comes in your ibadah, to make you become amazed by yourself. You become impressed by yourself. First of all, what's the cure to waswasa? In one ayah. I give you one ayah. This one ayah is a complete cure for waswasa from the beginning to the end. Ayah number 201 in Surah Al-A'raf. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا إِذَا مَسَّهُمْ طَائِفٌ مِّنَ الشَّيْطَانِ تَذَكَّرُوا فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. The ayah mentions three things. Number one, at-taqwa. So the person already is trying to do good and trying to keep away from haram. So anyone who has any kind of waswas from the shaitan, one thing that will repel it is trying to do as much good in Islam as possible and keep away from as much haram as possible. That's number one. Number two, تذكروا. Some of the scholars of tafsir said, تذكروا أن ذلك من الشيطان. Remember that this feeling is coming from shaitan. So when it comes in your mind, you don't say it's me. You say this is from shaitan, my enemy, and I'm not going to listen to it. And number three, some of the scholars of tafsir, they said, تذكروا أي ذكروا الله. They remember Allah, meaning that you remember Allah to push it away. So you push away with the dhikr of Allah, you push away by remembering it's from the shaitan, not from you, and by striving to do good deeds and keep away from haram. That's a generic answer. But we come now to the specific answer or the specific question of being impressed by yourself. To me, there are two things or three things that totally put that fire out. Number one is remembering that you have no guarantee that Allah will accept any one of your good deeds. وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ بَنَيْ آدَمَ بِالْحَقِّ إِذْ قَرَّبَا قُرْبَانًا فَتُقُبِّلَ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمَا وَلَمْ يُتَقَبَّلْ مِنَ الْآخَرِ. Recite to them the story of the two children of Adam in truth. When they both offered a sacrifice, and in both of them offered an act of sacrifice to Allah. One of them took all the crops and put it on the mountain, and one of them had animals and slaughtered them and put them on the mountain. Or an animal and slaughtered them and put it on the mountain. And Allah accepted one and Allah didn't accept the other. قَالَ لَأَقْتُلَنَّكِ He said, I'm going to murder you because of this. قَالَ إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ He said, Allah only accepts from the righteous. Do you have a guarantee, or me, that we're from the muttaqeen? That's a big standard to hold. So you don't know that Allah has accepted. Maybe Allah Azza wa Jal has taken your deeds and made it worthless. Haba'an manthura. Like the person who said, how will Allah forgive this person? Or Allah will never forgive this person. And Allah says, bear witness that I have forgiven them and I've made all of your deeds worthless. I've cancelled all of your deeds because you had the guts, you had this evil behavior that you dared to say that I will not forgive this person. I've forgiven them and I've wasted all of your deeds. The second thing, by reading the actions of the early generations and their biography and the actions of the Prophet ﷺ and the stories of the Prophets, wallahi, you realize that our deeds are like the zabad, like the foam on top of the scum on top of the flood water. When you have a flood and you have like just this like scum on top of the water, like this just dirt that goes on top of the water, that's what our deeds are. When you see what those people used to do, wallahi, what one of them did in a day, if you gathered all of us together in this room for 100 years, you don't do what one of them did in a day. So is there something to be impressed about? And then you also realize the possibility of ignorance, like that you don't know how something, or you didn't know how to do it properly, or you didn't do it in the right way, or that you thought it was allowed but it wasn't allowed, or you thought it was good but it wasn't good. And you remember Iblis, and that Iblis is where he is because of arrogance. And after that you find yourself to be humble before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you remember that is from the traps and the plots of the Shaytan. Number one, is there a correlation between mental illness and jinn possession? Yes, absolutely, there can be. It's not an absolute, like I'm not saying every mental illness is caused by the jinn, but there's definitely, you see, mental illnesses are a categorization of certain symptoms and certain problems that people have, but that doesn't really describe the underlying cause. Is the underlying cause, just chemicals in the brain, or is the underlying cause the jinn? But the symptoms describe, schizophrenia or bipolar or whatever. A person has certain features, or autism or whatever, that puts them in that box. So the doctor says, okay, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you meet the criteria for bipolar. But the doctor doesn't say, is it caused by this or is it caused by that? Is it caused by, did you eat something wrong? Did you take something wrong? Are you recovering from a drug addiction, or have you got a shaytan? Or is this something that happened when you were born? Did you have a defect when you were born? Is it genetic? Is it, they don't look at that. They just look at, do you fit into those symptoms? So for us, if we're talking about jinn possession, we're actually looking at, is the underlying cause of that medical illness the jinn, or is it something else? What would you advise someone whose iman hit rock bottom? They appear like a practicing Muslim on the outside, their heart feels dead, and it lacks husnul dhan billahi azza wa jal. I would advise them, first of all, قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Say, O my servants who've transgressed against themselves, don't despair of the mercy of Allah. Allah forgives all sins. Don't despair of Allah's mercy. All I want the person to do is to stick to istighfar. To realize that you're in this place where you are because you made some mistakes. And so did I make mistakes. And maybe Yawm al-Qiyamah, my mistakes will be worse than yours. And the cure for those mistakes is istighfar. Even if you say, I don't feel sorry, I don't feel like I mean it, just ask Allah, oh Allah, cover it for me and destroy the consequences. Don't make any bad consequences for me. That's the meaning of istighfar. Try to remember Allah, even just a little bit. Listen to a little bit of the Quran. Think about the signs of Allah. Learn something small about your deen. Help someone for the sake of Allah. Help your sister. You found a sister needs a little bit of help. Give a sister a little bit of help. And suddenly you'll find that Iman just starting to raise again. And stick to the Quran. Listen to it, recite it, seek a cure for the deadness of the heart. Because the Quran is shifa'un lima fi sudur. It's a cure for what's in the heart. What process do you take to heal from trauma Islamically? First of all, to complain of your grief and sorrow to Allah. قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. The first is complain of your situation to Allah. Nobody actually likes people to complain to them except Allah. Have you ever saw that? Nobody likes people to complain about their suffering and moan about their difficulty, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for you to complain to Him about your situation. Number two, try to have the mentality of coming near to Allah through that trauma. Instead of seeing that trauma as a punishment that's taking you away from Allah, see that trauma as a means to get close to Allah, even if it is by al-inkisar. Inkisar means being broken, having a broken heart. Like crying in front of Allah and just being completely broken. But you're being broken in front of Allah. You're not being broken in front of the people. Learn about Allah, His names and attributes and actions. Because this is what Yaqub said, وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know about Allah what you don't know. And then after that, if you see that it's beneficial to speak to some people with expertise, counselors and things like that, but they should be practicing Muslims. Because the last thing you want, and I've seen it, people have severe trauma and they go to a non-Muslim counselor and they tell them, you know, what you need to do is haram. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do this haram, you know, that's what you make. Or they tell them that the haram you've got trauma over wasn't haram. You know, like, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, you can do this kind of haram, it's fine. They don't know how to worship Allah, so how are they going to help you to overcome this trauma? But like a good Muslim counselor who can give you good advice about the medical process of it. And make dua, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can remove everything from your heart and make your heart clean and whole again. And that's not difficult for Allah Azza wa Jal. And I think the other questions were very similar, not the same, but I think they were quite similar. How do you get fear and love of Allah back was the last one. And I think that's a good question as well. How do you get the fear back and how do you get the love of Allah back? The more you know Allah, the more you love Allah. But you have to learn about Him. You have to learn about His names. You have to learn about His attributes. You have to learn about His actions. You have to ponder on the Quran. You have to read the Quran and come back to the Quran. That's how you increase in love of Allah. And by following the Prophet ﷺ, and by doing your obligatory deeds and following up with extra voluntary deeds, then you get the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts love for him in your heart, and he has love for you. And from that is his name, Al-Wadud, the one who loves his believing servants and the one who is loved by his believing servants. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Oh, amazing. Tell me, yeah, because I promised him I would answer it, but like it went from my mind. Sahih, he did, yeah. I remember. Jazakallahu khairan. The brother, he said, we mentioned the story of the people of Noah, and he said, look, in today's day and age, picture making, animation, photography, it's everywhere, right? Like how, if we're talking about how this was what the Shaytan used as a trap, then how do we navigate this in the world today? The first thing is by keeping away from the haram. That's the first thing. By learning what's haram and what's not, and keeping away from the haram. And included in keeping away from the haram is keeping away from that which you doubt. Me personally, I personally am okay with digital videography, in my personal view. I honestly believe it doesn't fall under the prohibition. For two reasons. Number one, it has no permanence and no essence. It's just bits and bytes. They disappear when you press a button and they come back. It has nothing it has no permanence to it. It has nothing which remains. And number two, the fact that it's a moving image makes it different to that which is a still image. And I think when you put those two together, the view of most of our mashayikh, but not all, I still have mashayikh who believe it's haram, but the view of most of our mashayikh that we asked about it is that they said that they're okay with moving digital videography. And that's, I feel comfortable with that. But when you go beyond that and you start talking about what about still digital photos, okay, I mean, some people okay with it, some not, but if you're not sure about it, دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك. Leave that which you doubt for that which you don't doubt. And then people say, well, what about if I print it and it just gets, you're just getting closer and closer to the prohibition. So honestly, don't look at what everybody does, but look at what you are certain is permitted, and what you are not sure about, leave it. Even if it means you leave some things that were beneficial to you. And as for like digital animations and things like that, I don't know the answer to that. We spoke about it with some of the mashayikh, because at AMAU we were thinking about the issue of digital animations, like as in animating 3D characters and things like that, but digitally. Like in wallahi, fi nafsi minhu shay, my heart doesn't settle on it. And I'm not saying to you, like I'm not giving you a fatwa on it. My heart doesn't settle on it. I don't feel confident about it. But keep away from that which you don't feel confident about, and stick to that which you do, which you know and you feel to be right, based on knowledge. And don't look at what the people do, because people by default do, if you follow most of the people on the earth, they'll misguide you from the path of Allah. Do we have any further? Oh, we did have sisters. SubhanAllah. How can we recognize when our actions or thoughts are influenced by the shaitan versus our nafs? The answer to that is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالنَّفْسِ اللَّوَّامَةِ. I swear by the soul who blames himself. Blame yourself. Blame yourself. And see that the shaitan is not bringing something that's not there. Shaitan is calling you to something that is already there in you. Like, so we talked about being impressed with your actions. Everyone has a bit of pride in them. Everyone has a bit of pride in themselves. And what shaitan does is come and make that much bigger than it has to be and it should be. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. How do you differentiate between waswas and forgetfulness in the salah? The best way is that forgetfulness should be something that happens rarely and is yasir. It's a small thing that happens rarely. For example, once in a long time, you forgot the tashahhud. in the middle of the salah. But when it's happening regularly and frequently or in a severe way where you don't remember what you prayed, then this is more likely to be from the shaitan, an affliction from the shaitan. And there's no reason why the other one can't be as well. Overwhelming waswas pertaining to aqeedah. They know the solution is to seek knowledge. However, every time they open a class, the waswas starts again. It becomes amplified and introduces new doubts. How do you overcome this? The ayah in Surah Al-A'raf, what I said to you, ayah number 201. Strive to do good deeds, even if it's not the aqeedah class. Strive to do good deeds. Remember, this is from shaitan, and every time it comes into your head, remember Allah Azza wa Jal. And I think if it's very severe, then ruqya shar'iyya is worthwhile in this. Can we extend the jinn lectures to sisters, please? I'm sure we can at least do something with the camera, right? Like because it could be that I understand if the brothers have got a situation where the room doesn't be big enough, but could we not maybe make a venue or a place or option for the sisters and just connect the camera or something? We'll try. We'll try our best. I can't promise because it's not in my hands to promise it. But I'm looking at Shaykh Ahmed and he's looking positive about it. Can you elaborate on music? Would that fall under modern traps? Heavy evidences on both sides. There's no heavy evidence on both sides. There is no evidence on the other side. There's not one single dalil, la min qarib wa la min ba'id. There's not one, and I'm not saying that I'm genuinely saying I do not know one single dalil for the permissibility of music. I don't know anyone, not even one, not a weak hadith, not a fabricated hadith. I don't know any at all. And the prohibition came in the Quran, fi ghayri ma ayah, in more than one ayat, including the ayah in the beginning of Surah Luqman and elsewhere. And it came in the Sahih, in Sahih al-Bukhari. Mu'allaqan majzuman bihi. Bukhari declared it to be Sahih, and he brought it in his Sahih al-Bukhari, the prohibition of it. And no one from the Ummah had a different view until Ibn Hazm rahimahullah ta'ala. And Ibn Hazm is known for having fatawa which are shadha, rahimahullah. He's known for it. I can give you some other fatawa of Ibn Hazm. If you like the one on music, you take the other ones as well. Wallah, you'll run away from them. Ibn Hazm has ghara'ib in his fatawa, no doubt. And nobody said it before him, and even in his time they refuted him. Rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'ah. And he was a great person, but he made a mistake in that issue. Like he didn't bring dalil. There is no dalil on the other side. There's 400 years of ijma'. You can't break that apart because people do it today. La wallah, I don't think anybody brought dalil until the Sufiya started coming close to Allah by listening to it. How do you advise a person? Allahumma, there's one thing, and I want to mention it because it came into my mind that people might think it's a dalil. Like it's not a dalil. The hadith of the two young girls who were singing on the day of Eid. Abu Bakr entered the house of the Prophet ﷺ, and there were two young girls, jariyatani, and they were singing. Abu Bakr said, Ma'azif al-Shaytan fi bayti Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Aw kama qal. He said, the instrument of Shaytan in the house of the Messenger of Allah. And he's blaming Aisha. He said, you brought the Shaytan into the house of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet ﷺ said, Da'huma, leave the two of them. I'm going to tell you why this is not a dalil for two reasons. Number one, Abu Bakr said, instrument of the shaitan. Did the Prophet ﷺ contradict him? Did the Prophet ﷺ say, it's not instrument of shaitan, Abu Bakr? This is beautiful. He didn't. He didn't stop Abu Bakr when he said instrument of the shaitan. He let him say it. He said, leave them. Tayyib, leave them is what we call a rukhsa. And from that which is well known is that a rukhsa is only limited to the circumstances given in the rukhsa. You know, the allowance is allowed for that thing. I'll give you an example. When we shorten our prayer when we're traveling, it's only when you're traveling. You can't shorten the prayer Any other time, you can't just shorten the prayer because you're tired. You can't just add things to it. Yani the prayer is shortened when you're tired. The Prophet ﷺ allowed 2 young girls on the day of Eid to sing without instruments and without haram in what they said. Zain, that is your rukhsah. You can't have 2 adult women. You can't have it on the day that's not the day of Eid. You can't have it with musical guitar in the background and piano and all of that stuff. You can't have it with the lyrics that take people away from the remembrance of Allah. And let's be honest, you want to see what musicians do today? You all know what the musicians, what's that Shaytan in jail for? You know what they, and wallahi, I don't think he committed a crime except the issue of consent. Otherwise, they all do it. He just did what every other one of them does every other day. Except the issue is that they just put him in jail because these women came and said, oh, we didn't consent to it. Otherwise, that nobody had a khilaf, that was what they did every day. Are those people who, is that a sign of something's going to bring you close to Allah? For the point is that there is no dalil. In fact, the dalil in that hadith is against them, not for them. I don't know, I'm trying to think of another dalil, I can't think of anything that they brought. It's not strong on both sides. How do you advise a person to look into doing ruqya to solve some problems they might have? We're going to do it in the lecture, inshallah ta'ala, because I don't want to take the lecture like that. Allahu Akbar. I feel like the different handwriting indicates that it was different people who asked the question. So that either that or it's really clever. I just thought about that as a really clever way of writing your questions with different handwriting, so you think they're all from different people, and then you get 5 answers. And we'll just take a pause on it. I'm not ignoring it. It's here, and I just go to the brothers for a couple of points. I want to see is anyone over here, because I'm just looking over here as if there's nobody else in the room. During marriage, you're allowed to play the not the drums. That's like a little bit of a you're allowed to play the duff. It's like a what do you call it? It's like a tambourine without the cymbal, without the metal in it, just like a simple thing. Now again, the rukhsah came with just that in marriage, and again, it's young girls, it's not adult women, and it's definitely not men playing the piano. That's for sure. So actions as a part of Iman, that deserves a proper video. But in reality, the Quran describes actions as part of Iman. I'll just give you one example. The story of the Qibla changing in Surah Al-Baqarah, and Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah will not cause your Iman to be lost. What Iman is the ayah talking about? What the whole ayah is talking about, the way you pray, the direction you pray. The Prophet ﷺ said, so that's an ayah. The Prophet ﷺ said that Iman is bid'un wa sittun, or he said bid'un wa sab'una shu'bah. Iman is 60 something levels or 70 something levels. The highest of it is to say La ilaha illallah, and the lowest of it is imatatul adha an at-tariq, moving something away from the road. So the highest is something you say, and the lowest is something that you do. وَالْحَيَاء شُعْبَةٌ مِّن شُعَبِ الْإِيمَانِ, and shyness is a part of Iman, and shyness is an action of the heart. And then it's sufficient to quote the likes of Al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, who said, I met 1,000 scholars in the cities. Every single one of them said that Iman is statement and action. And there's no doubt about it. And we gave a full lecture, by the way, with literally hundreds of evidences. That lecture is available, inshallah ta'ala. Lakin just min bab ikhtisar, to give a quick answer. The ayah, we mentioned the ayah, وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ أي صَلَاتَكُمْ. And we mentioned the hadith about the shu'ab al-iman. And we mentioned the ijma' that Al-Bukhari narrates from 1,000 scholars of the different cities, that Iman is what you say and what you do. And the view that Iman is only in the heart is a view that has lawazim, which are from the most evil of consequences. Because the consequence is you no longer take your religion seriously anymore. Because the asl of the murji'ah is the belief that your actions are not important in defining your iman. And they're not relevant in defining your iman. And that means you no longer care about the actions you do. And that's why the best of the murji'ah, if that can be said, are murji'atul fuqaha. The fuqaha like Abu Hanifa and those who fell into what they fell into, because those people said, iman is in the heart and your actions matter. Sah? They said iman is in the heart, but your actions are important. Your actions actually, you can be punished and you can be... And the worst of the murji'ah is Jahm ibn Safwan, who said that you only have to know Allah. If you know that there is someone who is Allah, you are mu'min kamil al-iman. Even if you are munafiq, even if you are a Hindu, if you know that there's Allah, you have full iman. And that's the worst of them. That's why the more you consider iman a part, actions a part of an iman, then the more seriously you take your actions. And the more seriously you take your religion. That's why Ibn Abi Dawood, in his Ha'iyah, he mentions that the murji'i is the one who is la'uban bidinihi. He takes his religion as a joke. Because ultimately, there's nothing sacred anymore when you don't have actions as part of iman. It's just like whatever I do, I'm still going to be mu'min kamil al-iman. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. I'm going to see here, where do I start with learning Islamic sciences as a sister? I wonder if I could recommend to you that you take a look, and I'm not, it's not the only place, please don't misunderstand me, but just as a min bab, just helping, take a look at the institute that I teach in, Al-Madrasatul Umariyah, AMAU. Just have a look at the prospectus, have a look at, you don't have to register or anything, just have a look at our prospectus and what we teach. And maybe you could ask them to give you a trial, to just go onto it and like just browse it and have a look. You could just send them an email, they would give you a trial, inshallah. And you could see if that could work for you, because that's what we're trying to do. And we have some really, really good sisters who are learning, and some of them have done exceptionally well, better than the brothers, to be honest with you. That's the truth, like proven from our experience, is that they've done exceptionally well. How to overcome waswasa of the shaitan when you're making wudu or praying, that we answered, the ayah in Surah Al-A'raf. But also, have your wudu and prayer observed by somebody and let them make a judgment about it. Don't let you, if you feel like the shaitan's clouded your judgment, then you have to let, like if someone watches you making wudu and says, yeah, you did it right, you have to trust them in it. Very important question. Beautiful question, and I really think it's very important. You want to share something beneficial with someone, and when you do, Shaytan whispers that you're just showing off. What did the early generations used to do in that situation? When Shaytan would whisper to them that you're just showing off in your prayer, they would lengthen their prayer. They wouldn't shorten their prayer. They wouldn't delete the post. They would post two, and so to speak. But you get what I mean. And they wouldn't stop doing it, because stopping doing it is actually stopping it because of people, and that's worse even than adding to the beauty of it for people, is to stop doing the deed for people. Instead, do the deed that you are going to do and wrestle with your intention to make it for Allah Azza wa Jal. A very nice question in addition to my answer, that we mentioned about istighfar, and we said if a person doesn't feel regret, let them make istighfar. But a person said, but isn't tawbah to weep and feel remorseful? It is, absolutely. But if a person is not there yet, where they're not at the stage of feeling that level of remorse, because not all the time we feel that level of remorse for sin, like we might not have got there yet to that stage, then at least ask Allah to cover the sin and take away the consequences. And the last question on here, which I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to take last couple from here, and then we're going to wrap up, inshallah. Says, I recently lost my father. how should a daughter help him in the best way possible? So first of all, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him al-firdaus al-a'la min al-jannah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make his grave expansive. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him righteous children that will make dua for him. Ameen. So the very first thing you can do is you can make dua for your father. And that dua, the dua of a child for their father, is one of the things that adds to the dead person's good deeds. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمَ انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث. When the son of Adam dies, all of his deeds cease except three. صدقة جارية, continuous charity, so that you could give on behalf of him, right? You could give continuous charity on his behalf. So build a well, build a masjid, something that, what does continuous charity mean? It's something that people don't just benefit from once. For example, food, people benefit once and it's really good to give food, but people eat it and it's gone. But if you get a well, the well people keep on taking water for years and years and years and years and years until it falls down. The masjid, people might pray in it for 200 years before it falls down. صدقة جارية أو علم ينتفع به, or knowledge that is benefited from. أو ولد صالح يدعو له, or a righteous child that makes dua for them. Out of interest from the brother's side, quick question for you. Do you know who is the only person who can get all three? If you know from the brothers, put your hand up. Who is the only person who can possibly get all three of those? Or is inshallah guaranteed to get all three of them? صدقة جارية أو علم ينتفع به أو ولد صالح يدعو له. It's only one who can get all of them. The scholar. Because the scholar gives sadaqah jariyah with their ilm, and the knowledge is benefited from, and their students are like their children, for they make dua for them. For that is, they say, the ulama say, that only the scholar gets all of them. And also from what you can do is the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar. Abdullah ibn Umar was passing by on his camel, and he came across a Bedouin man, and the Bedouin man asked him for something. He gave him his camel. And the companion of Abdullah ibn Umar said, why did you give him that? You could have just given him like some little bit of money. You gave him your whole camel. Like, why did you do that? He said, he was my father's friend. And he quoted the hadith that from goodness to your parents is to honor their friends when they die. You need to go to your father's friends and to take care of them, send them gifts, look after them. That is part of looking after your parents when they pass away. And Hajj and Umrah on their behalf. Those are some of the things. My personal view is that reciting the Quran for them doesn't reach them. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. That seems to be the more balanced view, even though there is a view among the early generations that reciting the Quran benefits them. Reciting the Quran from the point of being a righteous child, yes, but gifting the Quran to them, and gifting the recitation of the Quran to them, we didn't see this among the early generations, so we feel the stronger view is that it's not beneficial to those who pass away. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. We take one last question. Actually, there's one brother had his hand up for ages. Na'am, Habibi. What will be covered at the Dawra Ilmiya? That's a very good question. I think I didn't get far enough into thinking about it yet. But inshallah ta'ala, I will. We'll make a proper announcement about it. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala. I just had so much going on, and we've still got two programs tomorrow, that I didn't get that far to actually thinking about how it's going to be and all the stuff we're going to cover now. Now, Murji'atul Fuqaha are a group of people from the scholars of fiqh who fell into some aspects of what the Murji'ah fell into. From some of the students of Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, and Ibrahim was not from them. He was staunchly against them. However, there was a student of Ibrahim al-Nakha'i called Hammad, bin Abi Sulaiman, if I'm not mistaken. And he got this issue in his head, and they were the least of the Murji'ah because of two things. Number one, they held that you have to pronounce the Shahada, not just hold it in your heart, and they said that it's part of Iman. And they said pronouncing the Shahada is part of Iman. So for them, most of the Murji'ah, they said it's tasdeeq, right? It's just belief in your heart. You don't have to actually say it. So they added saying it, and also they said that your deeds can be a reason for you to be punished and to go to Jannah. So they were very strict upon doing good deeds and keeping away from haram. But they said that your iman is of one level and it doesn't go up and it doesn't go down, and actions are not part of it. And for that reason they were wrong. But the reason they separated them is because their belief was the least of the belief of the Murji'ah, and because it seems like they fell into following what one or two of them went into, and then it became like a confusion among them, that they separated from them to a certain extent, even though the people at their time were very harsh against them. And it's very, very harsh statements against them from the people at their time. Like, can we, out of respect for the fact that some of the Imam of Islam, the great Imams of Islam and scholars of fiqh were there, for we don't speak, we separate them out of that aspect now. And Allah knows best. You're allowed to convey something that you convey something with two conditions. There are two conditions for conveying Islamic knowledge from AMAU or anywhere else. The first one is that you believe that knowledge to be authentic. So for example, if I mentioned a hadith, you checked it, you went into it, yeah, that's definitely a hadith, he said it right. And number two, you convey it as it's supposed to be said, with the, accurately as it's supposed to be said. And if you do that, the Prophet ﷺ said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Convey from me even if it's only one ayah. Like, and if you see that your teacher misspoke or made a slip of the tongue, or you're not sure about it, maybe it was a slip of the tongue, maybe it's a different riwayah, but you're not sure, then don't leave that until you're sure, because it could have been a slip of the tongue, or it could have been a mistake that was made, or a misprint or something like that. So if you have a doubt about it, don't post it. And Allah knows best. I think that's a good place for us to stop, because already went past 10 o'clock. And subhanAllah, there's still programs tomorrow and the next day, and then inshallah the next week there's a whole load of programs. I honestly want to extend my thanks and appreciation to Bukhari Center. And the brothers know how highly I think of the project and how much I support it. And I 100% wallahi. And I encourage what Shaykh Ahmed encouraged you to do. Support the project, wallahi. Support it. Give it your support. Give it a little bit of help. Perhaps this can be your sadaqah jariyah that will benefit you when you pass away. And also it shows your appreciation for the fact that all the efforts that are made to bring Islamic knowledge and to support that Islamic knowledge and bring it to the people here. So show your appreciation and your support for them, inshaAllah ta'ala, and help them towards a goal which is a noble goal, right? To have a masjid. Alhamdulillah, and we've got some masajid here, and there's still a need, right? I mean, if you see the Jumu'ah khutbah, there's 2 khutbahs, and the masjid across the road has 2, right? So there's still no space in any of them. So there's clearly a need in that area for a large masjid, and even better if it's bringing knowledge and facilities for the young people and for the elders and everything, then that's nurun ala nur, light upon light, inshallah. هذا والله أعلم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.